Hi, readers. I'm Jordan,
And I'm Katie.
and welcome to Not Another Heroine, the podcast where we break down the best and worst fictional heroines, those swashbuckling ladies who have to work a little harder than expected for their happy ending.
This week, we are finally finishing Court Duel by Sherwood Smith, otherwise known as Unfortunately, I Find You Boring.
No, not them, Katie.
We're getting dark and sinister.
Just a little bit. But, I mean, oh, that reminds me. So, have you seen Clueless?
Yes, I have. A long time ago, but yes. That is one movie I have seen.
Okay, don't take this the wrong way, but the last intro we recorded, you sounded a little bit like Cher.
I could see that. I think it's the Valley Girl intonation there.
just a touch, but it's perfect. It's just I love it. So thank you for that.
What is her line? As if.
As if.
That was too much attitude. I'll try again, never. I'm sorry, I'm being honest.
That's okay. It'll just come to you naturally.
Maybe. I'm not very good at it's not impersonations. Is it? When you like
in case you'd like to know, we've been working on the podcast for about 10 and a half hours at this point. So very much like our champagne episode, this is going to be the tired episode.
This is turning into a full-time job.
It sure is. And we love it. Though.
Yeah, that's fair. It's like a fun full-time job.
Yeah, I like it.
Well, getting into it. So we ended episode 3, right? Episode 3. With Flauvik going in for a little peck with our girl Mel.
Oh,
yeah. Yep. And it's funny because Mel thinks about the same as you do. She literally laughs off the whole thing. And funnily enough, I don't think that's a word, but it sounds right in this context. Funnily enough, a moment later, in response to a joke made by Flauvik, she immediately links it to something that who said? The Marquis of Chevraith.
I wonder, maybe the Marquis is just sitting at the top of her brain.
Isn't that interesting?
Right after a bad romantic moment with another man, she immediately thinks of the Marquis.
The Marquis is living in her head rent-free.
Has been for the better part of 2 books.
I was about to say this whole podcast and book. But getting to the meat of why Mel is there, Flauvik recommends for the theme of the engagement party to be like a historical throwback thing where everyone's dressed up as an ancestor from a specific time period and they have like music and decorations that fit. And so Mel's all super excited. She's like, oh my God, this is a great idea, but let me turn it into, my history, our family, and see if I can find something that ties in like Nee's family too.
I mean, the descriptors of this party made me want to go.
Oh my God, it sounded so fucking cool.
Right?
Yeah, it made me jealous of rich people and their parties. Like, I know I will never be invited to one of those, but like, damn, it's probably really cool.
If you were ever invited to one of those, you'd probably end up in the corner halfway through the evening making friends with whatever, pet was roaming around.
That is true. I'm definitely the kind of person that finds the dog at the party. And I will live with that. I'm not super social. Jordan here is one of like 3 friends.
Right back at you. Like we are the same person.
Yeah. And so for Mel, think back, dear listeners / readers. Was there a place somewhere in the palace that had a bunch of like historical records about family members and royalty?
Oh, this place.
In a specific study that also sometimes, almost all the time, houses a certain marquis. Interesting. Yep. And who actually has a whole interaction that doesn't go south?
I was so surprised at this part.
This was, I think, their first actual conversation that wasn't fucked up.
Yeah, it's positive. Like they actually have their horseback ride wager thing earlier on.
Oh, that was true. But didn't they get to the end and they like got into it again about some dumb shit?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it only took the whole book. But they got there. Literally the whole book. This is the final episode of this
We're
podcast.
proud of you, Mel.
For this book.
Yeah.
Let me caveat there.
Mhm.
But yeah, we're proud. You did it. You did it.
I mean, he's a handsome man.
Mm-hmm,
She's nervous.
That's fair. I feel like we all felt that way. But during this conversation, super adorably, like it's in such a Mel manner that this is delivered. She invites the Marquis and his parents to the engagement party, and she basically asks him like, I should invite you guys,
Oh, this
right?
part.
And he's like, yes, it would be a little weird if you didn't.
Future
speaking.
king here. Yeah, you should invite me.
Yeah. And then she's like, oh, that's fair. And then runs away. Unsurprising. So for the next several days, Mel is busy planning a party, doing historical research for said party, and doing a whole lot of writing to her little secret admirer. She's planning things. She's getting ready. She's talking to a bunch of artisans. Is that the right word?
She goes out and goes into full hostess mode.
Yeah, which is impressive because she's never done that before.
No, this is her first time at court.
Yeah, and she smashes it. Like she kills it.
She kind of approaches it the way she approaches like battle planning and getting things done. Oh, I need to talk to X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can do that.
This lady would be really good in charge of some like big Fortune 500 company, is like their like operations person or something, like screaming at people like, you're stupid, like this needs to be done yesterday.
Okay, that fits. In the beginning, remember, she's super good at numbers.
That
She's
is
like
true.
the mathematician wizard
is-
kind of thing.
Yeah, literally the very first scene in this fucking book. Wow.
Full circle.
That was an excellent point, Jordan.
Thank you.
Yes.
I
What
do
is
make
the little
them rarely?
what is
With
the
little
little
fan.
fans? Yeah, like direct hit.
We are waving our imaginary fans at each other right now.
You can't see us, but we look stupid.
Yeah, that's
yeah. So Mel keeps planning her party, working away, until she gets a surprise visitor. And normally that would be exciting, but this person is none other than her former family's. Oh my God.
Camel?
Her,
Is that like a camel related to you?
that was a gross laugh too. Her former family spy, Azzy
is back.
Unfortunately, though, immediately bringing a downer to this laughing, joking moment in our lives. He basically tells her that in response to a letter that she had sent earlier, kind of like asking him like, hey, like, what's this whole Princess Alestra situation? Like, you know, did she actually knowingly help me escape? And he's basically like, yes, like, obviously she very well knowingly, like,
This
all of
was
this.
Azzy, you're kind of an idiot.
I know. He's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, we planned this whole escape and you're like doubting the truth. But yeah. And then he basically, he basically offers, he's like, Mel, like, I understand how like crazy this all is, but why don't you let me kind of reinvigorate my spying efforts, and we can help Marquis of Chevreth, now that we know he's like, you know, good guy, TM capitalized, we can help him secure the throne against the Marquis of Marindar, who basically is a snaky bitch. And it's funny too because he retires. He's like a gold worker or something, and he basically is getting bored in retirement. And he's like, "Can I have my like side job back now?" Akko.
It's exciting. He was a spy during a war. He got to help
That's true.
overturn an entire government.
And then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, we don't need you anymore. Like, go back to gold working.
Go make jewelry for us.
He's like, this is not fun. But it's interesting, this little tidbit at the end of the conversation. She has another task for him. So she asks him to make a little gold ring for someone special. Ooh, I wonder who that could be. Not her secret admirer that she's been writing like love letters with.
Not the one person who's already given her a ring.
Weird. Yeah. And she just goes on in this little episode of like showing character development and emotional growth, because she very suavely like arranges this to interrupt and like intercept a little writing group that's attended very often by her brother and his fiance, and also the Marquis of Chevreuse, who they were like, oh, you don't have to come with us. I know you're not going to like it. Like, there's a certain person here. Like,
We all know you don't like him.
exactly. But she's like, you know what? I need to start supporting this man in his claim to the throne. I'm just going to like go find them and invite myself into their little wedding party. And she does it so well. Like, I was
It was impressive.
super surprised.
After watching her like fumble around with, especially when she first arrives at the capital, and her interactions with Lady Tamara, this was masterful.
Yeah, masterful. That's a good word for it. Because like normally she avoids these, so she doesn't have to spend time with the Marquis. She doesn't have to have other people see her not having a good time with him and like awkwardly glaring daggers at him. And it's funny too, because like this whole thing goes off without a hitch. And she like even has this like very pleasant, very public conversation with the Marquis. And I just imagine he's like,
what is happening?
That's suspicious. Like, that's weird.
You go from complete hate to, I can tolerate your presence.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because like in the book, she just kind of, she like has this conversation and she's like, okay, I did it. And then walks away and totally ignores him for the rest of the time. But like, job well done. But also it's still Mel. Yikes. So basically, in one fell swoop, Mel shows her heartily earned social prowess and also her personal growth. It was just a touching moment. She did it. Full send.
Yeah. You know, I don't remember this scene, like
Really?
reading it originally. Like I remember it now since we
Yeah.
just went through it again. But yeah, it was like reading it for the first time.
I actually don't remember this one either, because I feel like it was a good point. Like she has this whole moment where she's like, okay, the Marquis of Chevreuse is a good guy. I'm going to like personally have my spy help support him. And then also I'm going to have a public conversation. So people are like, oh, wow, like she supports him.
She's maneuvering.
Yeah. Yes. She did it.
It's
very end of the novel. She did it. She can now maneuver.
a lot of the action scenes that we have in the first book like help push Mel towards character development and like emotional growth.
Mhm.
But there's the same pushing technique here in, Court Duel, but it's more subtle, so you don't quite recognize it for what she's doing.
Yeah, but it's successful and she's doing it well and it's impactful and it's doing all the things she needs it to do. So we have this great little moment and then we immediately get our hearts crushed a little bit. So it starts to rain and so the group returns back to the palace and Mel has this little walk to herself and she's thinking through all these like very complicated feelings like, oh my gosh, the Marquis is like actually kind of a good guy. Like we've had a lot of history together. Like, how do I feel about all this?
How do I fix some of this?
Ooh, yes, because she has this whole existential crisis about like, how in the fuck do I apologize to this man?
She kind of sits back and realizes I've been the asshole.
Yeah, she definitely like, is she the asshole? Like, yes.
Yes, you are.
But it's so sad because I feel like she does not deserve this next scene. So basically, she's kind of like looking out the window and she sees these, like foggy two bodies, outside. And she's like, I'm a curious person. I'm going to look.
Foggy set the scene a little too.
Oh, yeah. It's not like that. So it's raining outside. And I imagine they're not very like high quality,
this
like
isn't Titanic
glass.
fog. It is.
No, not at all. It's like depressing, like Curiosity Killed the Cat fog. Like, oh, who is that? And then you kind of open the window a little bit more and you're like, oh. Because it's the Marquis. And who is with the Marquis? The newly arrived Lady Eleanor.
I can't even hate her.
I can't either. Because she didn't do anything to deserve it. And this doesn't turn into a real like love triangle, which I very much have complicated feelings about. But it just it gives Mel another opportunity to misinterpret something and assume the worst of people. Because like she sees, Eleanor all like lovey, fluffy emotions in her eyes. And she's got like a little like blush on her cheeks. And she immediately assumes that these people are like, they're together.
But that is such a real human expression. Like
true.
Like you catch a couple who's been in love for years and they look at each other a certain way. And I imagine that's how Lady Eleanor was looking at Chevreuse because they've known each other since childhood.
Yes. Yeah. And it's interesting too, because we didn't talk about it earlier, but there was Right before Mel gets full into her party planning, she had breakfast with Elinette and Nee. And Elinette kind of is coy when she gets asked about the marquee. And they have like, like she doesn't say anything out loud, but Mel's getting like the weird feeling about it.
Like, this is mine.
Yeah.
Stay away from him.
And then there's like one part and she's like outside the tapestry, fucking yet again eavesdropping.
The eavesdropping. You gotta stop with the eavesdropping, Mel.
And she hears something in Lady Elinette's tone that's like, oh my God, like she's in love with him. And she's like, I don't feel good about this. I'm just gonna party plan and avoid her.
In the corner.
I'm just gonna avoid her for the rest of my life. And so that's basically how she feels this time too, because she immediately feels like curiously nauseous. Like, that's interesting. You know what that feeling is, Mel? It's
jealousy.
Weird. Everyone understood that except her.
She's so unwilling to examine her own feelings about things.
Yes. And it like kind of not frustrates me sometimes because I also get it. But also it's like, girl, just like open your eyes a little bit bigger and you would see that things are not as bad as you're always assuming. Yeah. And so to double down on this like not good feeling, it's been 2 days since Mel sent the ring to her secret admirer and she has not gotten any response back. And
heart-wrenching.
Yeah, because it gets worse. Until, she gets a letter back and it's a little snooty.
A little?
It's a lot snooty. It's a lot mean. Understandable, like reasonably mean, but it's kind of a dick move. So basically this admirer kind of thanks her for the gift, but he's basically a bit confused about the implications because he's kind of asking, like, does this mean that Mel wants to turn their quiet, private little communique into something public? Because if he wears this, like, people are gonna know. They're gonna be like, who is this ring from?
Well, especially after Mel's very public scene of just
look at my ring.
Own ring. Yeah.
People are gonna have questions. So he's like, kind of reasonably like, I thought we were just sharing secret messages, but you want to take this to the next level, but you also said that you don't. Like, I'm confused. You're giving me mixed signals.
Dick move, but considering how, like we just said, Mel doesn't examine her own feelings. Mel probably didn't even think about the implications.
Nope. And she really doesn't, because she's immediately like super nettled and pissed off about it. And she like struggles with herself and she's wanting to write back a very few like pointed responses. And then like specifically about, oh, wow, you can't accept gifts, huh? But ultimately, she shows some character growth and she decides to simply write back that he's given her much to think about. And then asks quite politely that if she had asked, would he wear it? Fucking super cute, because guess what this motherfucker responds with?
Response.
A single white rose.
Purity of intent.
Dead. Oh, romance like that could not happen in real life. It's
dead.
It's dead. Too fucking perfect and cute. Like, are you?
Well, how if it's the anticipation and the buildup, right?
Yeah.
We have so much like automatic and immediate back and forth.
Yeah, like instant gratification. But this is like, oh my God, this man is suave. He
doesn't have to say anything. He just sends a fucking flower.
Oh
like,
my God. Because it's basically like, you asked me to do anything and I'm going to do it. Even though as a dick, like, I still very much have feelings for you. So after that, like, little buildup, life goes on as usual until one day Mel finally agrees to start going to the popular sword fighting practice that a group of courtiers attend, including her brother, Savona, and Shivraeth. And after they've been there for a little while, Mel finally, reluctantly, agrees to a bout with Shivraeth. And she obviously loses. This is not any kind of like insta leveling up in her sword fighting abilities.
She stays pretty consistent from bad to bad.
Yep. Yeah. She's still just not great. But she keeps a level head. She doesn't have any like crazy little, like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed, I'm going to be mad.
I was proud of her during this scene.
I was too. She was like acting like a regular human being, like a grown woman. Yeah. And so it's kind of fun because Shivraeth asks her rather, pointedly but politely in his, cool, aloof manner, why she's never come to Petitioner's Court. because it's much different than it was in Galdrin's time. And he's like actually seeking outside opinion. He wants people to, consider like, how would you solve this problem? And Mel sort of demurs. She's like, I don't know how I feel about this. And then she kind of has a Mel moment and she's like, well, why would you want my ignorant opinion on anything political? And then the Marquis, has this interesting little tidbit where he's like, well, you're not ignorant. You've made some respectable progress to overcome that, lack of knowledge that you used to have. And does that not sound very similar to a certain letter written by a certain secret admirer?
What a difficult puzzle to put together.
I will just leave that to you, dear reader, listener, to you come to your own conclusions.
But my God, if you haven't figured it out by this point.
Girl, that was me. I'll be real. I remember, like, you go through this book and you're like, okay, there's only like one male character that they like really kind of go into. But like, not gonna lie, I don't know if my like brain wasn't turned on, but I was like, I still don't know who it is.
Well, maybe you shut that part of your brain off because you wanted
That's
more
fair.
anticipation.
I wanted to be surprised. And I was, because this book is so fucking cute. Anyway, Mel finally agrees to go to Petitioner's Court, and she finds that she's like really impressed with how the court is run now.
This is like what Judge Judy.
That's kind of what I imagined. Like they have, the Marquis of Chevreuse kind of sitting on this little cushion, and he has people walk up, and he's like, has his Judge Judy opinion about it, but in a very
Chevreuse way.
Yeah, but it's still like Judge Judy. Yeah. And so this like first time she doesn't say anything. She doesn't have any opinions because she's too busy listening and kind of hearing how the Marquis is soliciting opinions, and that really anyone like the courtiers who attend can kind of give their thoughts in like their recommendations, basically. And so Mel returns to her room with a response to a letter she had written to her admirer. And she basically flat out asks, she's like, I'm annoyed that we can't talk about like current events. Why do you think the Marquis of Chevreuse hasn't announced a coronation yet? Which, legitimate question, because it's been a couple months.
Yeah, they're just chilling. Everyone's like, oh, we'll get a king eventually.
Be fine. Yeah, but it's like, that's a lot of potential.
It's a lot of uncertainty for a nation.
Yeah, like maybe you should just like do it.
Imagine if we had an election and then just didn't like swear the president into office.
He was just like vibing. It's like, that's not how this works, sir.
I like this pending stage,
Yeah.
less commitment.
Yeah, but very, very sadly, the admirer responds, and he reveals that they won't plan a coronation or announce one until a throne was crafted for the new queen.
Fucking Lady Eleanor.
And cue the sad 2010 emo music. I am talking Pierce the Veil. I am talking all of the sad, Paramore feels up in this place, because goddamn.
It's such a subtle line.
Yeah.
But it's got so much power behind it.
Because all of a sudden, Mel has all these very complicated feelings about that little sentence and all of its implications. Because who other than Lady Eleanor would that throne be for?
Of course. It makes me wonder if the secret admirer knew how much turmoil that line would cause her to feel.
Oh, I like that. Because, yeah. He's basically like, okay, put your money where your mouth is.
Like, hello, wake up.
Yeah, like you're going to give me a ring, like, and you're going to mention real people. Like, okay, what you going to do about it? Nothing.
She just, she had, which, thank you for coming up with this term, the Mel moment.
Yeah, she had a Mel moment. She's like, full meltdown. And so she kind of decides to slink out of literally all future engagements. She kind of has like an excuse because she's like party planning the super awesome party, but also it's her like depressive episode.
Yeah. She sinks low.
Yeah, but at the end, all of her efforts are well worth it because the ball is a smashing success. And a little interesting tidbit. So who does Mel end up dancing with?
The Marquis. Little Vidanric.
Who specifically requested a dance with her. Aw, cute. And who is caught staring at said dance partner when he's like looking off in the distance?
Mel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
She'd
Mel.
be staring, and who ends up watching to see who else the Marquis dances with the whole night?
Mel.
Mm-hmm.
Mel.
And who does and who else does Mel dance with the whole night?
Oh, come on now.
She literally only dances with the Marquis, and then they have this like 4-person quad dance with her, the Marquis, Elena, and Savona. And it's very interesting because outside of these 2 dances, the Marquis does not dance with anyone else.
No one.
So he literally only had one-on-one dance, and then he had this little like 4 dance thing with his friends. Interesting. Fascinating. And who knows all of that information and all of that context? Mel. And why? Because she was staring the whole night.
The whole night. She's got it so bad for this dude.
And she won't admit it.
No, she has no idea. She's like,
Oh
I just happened to be staring at him.
That's weird. Like, it's not like I was looking at him the whole night to catalog exactly who he was dancing with. Like, only a weirdo would do that. Not me. Yikes. But no, she doesn't have any sort of like romantic feelings for this person.
for anyone.
Absolutely not. No.
That's something Mel feels.
Not at all. And it's kind of like a fun little thing, but it kind of threw me off. So during this little like romantic dance session between the bride and groom to be, Mel has a little like self-realization that, maybe she's a little bit lonely. And she has never seen a similar expression on a man looking at her as she sees on the face of her brother when he's looking at Dee. That's super depressing realization to come to. And so reasonably, she returns to her room a little melancholy, even though she planned this amazing, beautiful ball that went off without, a hitch. She's planning to definitely sleep because it's like 2:00 in the morning or something.
Mhm.
And, like maybe mope a little bit, that's like on the down low.
But like before we move a little bit further, that description of Mel and her little self-realization thing of
Mhm.
being sad. I wish there were more moments like that in the book. That's I think my only wish.
Like criticism or like
Not even a criticism because I would go and say it's perfect.
That's
But
fair.
the emotional depth that Mel shows in this one little scene, I just kind of want to see her suffer a little bit more,
Yeah.
like emotionally, because she
Yes.
just refuses to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. I almost wonder though if that's what makes these scenes like this one and then seeing Elena and the Marquis through the window, if that's what makes these scenes so powerful and like so immediately like, oh my God, I'm
because it
so
comes out of nowhere.
sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, she has these like moments of like she's always super aggressive, always assuming the worst of people, and then all of a sudden she's like, maybe I am a little bit lonely, and then it's like cue the waterworks. Like, I'm pretty sure I teared up when I was reading this. I'm like, no, that's so sad. Like, she deserves happiness. Yeah, but then it gets worse.
So actually way worse than that whole sad little emotional
Oh,
meltdown.
yeah, way worse. Because basically she has a rather urgent and unexpected visitor. And who is it? Azzy the spy, who promptly announces that the Marquis of Marindar is preparing to march on Ramalna City as soon as the last of her troops arrive. And even worse than that, they plan to light up a metric fuck ton of Kinthis to kill all the hill folk so they can chop down all the colorwoods. And so I don't think we've talked about it to this point yet, but like the way I understand it is Kinthis is like this like weed or something, and it has magical properties. And if you burn it, it like immediately kills all the hill folk. And so they've like gone through and kind of eradicated most of it. But the Marquis of Marindar basically, shoveled in again a metric fuck ton of this so that they could take away all the hill folk, get rid of all of the opposition that would be had to like cut down all the color trees and or color woods, and then fund their conquest basically.
It's kind of fitting using plants to kill plant people.
Oh, I didn't
That's why you have me here.
That makes sense. Your girl is not here.
Inflate.
That's fair. And so in very Mel fashion, she gets dressed at a breakneck speed and tells Azzy that he needs to immediately go tell the Marquis and his parents about what he had discovered in case they didn't already know. Because, they have their own spies and stuff, but she's just double checking. She's like, someone else needs to know this information, which good on her that she doesn't like immediately ride off being the only
she thinks
person.
ahead a little bit on this one.
Right. And so she goes full speed ahead to the hills to warn the hill folk, which is an interesting tidbit. Her first, inclination is to run off and save the hill folk, not, partake in any support of the Marquis of Marindar, no kind of funny business. She she is trying to protect the hill folk,
which is totally consistent with how the very beginning of her story kicked off.
Yeah, because she was prepared to like legit fight a war as a totally, misarmed group of old villagers to defend these people.
It makes me wonder how scary these hill folk are. Not like in person, like, oh, I'm sure they're weird looking, right? Because they're trees. But
sorry, because they're trees.
But what the concern, like the reason why they need all this metric fuck tons of Kinthus is because the hill folk are supposedly very powerful when they unite together and go after something. That's what, in the beginning they were trying to prevent, which is the hill folk coming after them.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that they actually pose a threat instead of just like being in the way. So that makes sense. And so in yet another reckless sprint on horseback across the countryside, this is like horseback ride number 74. Interestingly, there is an unknown helmed messenger always just a few hills ahead of her. And so as she crests up, she sees him in the distance cresting up another hill and then back down again and again for basically the whole day.
Is it a helm or is it a flappy hat?
I don't know. But those are interchangeable because we both know who this messenger is.
Fair.
Is it a plumed helm or is it a floppy hat? So basically she, stops for the night at an inn that this like messenger basically had to have stopped at too, because it's the only inn, to get a full night's rest at. And she asks the bartender the man's identity, to which he says, oh, that guy's in that little back room back there if you like want to go talk to him. And Mel, because that's what she always does, she tries to be sneaky and take a little peek through the door. And who is it? The Marquis of Chevreth. And he immediately sees her, obviously, because she is not the most sneaky person in, the universe.
I almost pictured this comic book level, like big-eyed. Oh shit.
He's here.
What do I do now?
Oh no. Because I think even in the book she starts to like step back and he's like, I see you.
You're not going anywhere.
You are not sneaky. But funnily enough, par for the course, the two have a little bit of a misunderstanding.
This is probably the biggest misunderstanding.
That's true. Like it's all fun and games when we talk about how they cannot have a reasonable conversation without like going for the throat. This is kind of the worst.
It culminates in this moment.
Yeah. Because kind of reasonably, the Marquis of Chevreth is wondering, like, what is Mel's whole role in all this, like, nonsense that is happening? Like, all of a sudden, he gets, notification probably that the Marquis of Marindar has all these, like,
notification troops on his handy-dandy little
phone. His,
like,
little light bulb.
He's got a light bulb. It's basically a cell phone, but it's like a glowy ball that tells him when something messages arrived.
Yeah. So he got, what is that Drake song? You always call me on your cell phone late night when you need my love.
You're asking the wrong
This
person.
is the second time I've done some kind of like song throwback, so please ignore me. But anyway, so he gets this notification. So he knows that the Marquis of Marindar is like has all these troops and it's shit's about to go down. And so he's like, that's interesting that all of a sudden Mel is also here and like she never really has been cool with me in public. Like she doesn't want to hang out. Like I hang out with around her, like people in her circle, but never with her directly. And we always fight. Like, is she here to go side with them and help this lady steal the throne? Which again, reasonable. Like Mel has not given him any kind of indication that she believes otherwise.
He's doing what he should be doing as a future ruler, which is weighing all the scenarios and kind of ranking them from like worst possible situation and is that the most likely one, all the way down to the least likely one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it double makes sense too, because she's like very publicly been seen buddy with the Marquis of Marindar's son, our guy Flauvik. They, talked at her ball. They had this like cute little like moment where they were like looking at each other across the ballroom. And so he's reasonably a little bit concerned. And what's sad though for Mel is that Mel literally can't prove that she got notification from her own spy, because Azmith went, or Azmith, oh my god,
Are we doing
yeah, Azzy, where even was I? Oh my god. So she can't prove it because she sent Azzy to go talk to the Marquis of Chevreuse, but at that point he was already on the road because like she kept seeing him. Like they left at exactly the same time, if not him a little bit before.
For some reason, okay, at this point I kind of doubt Mel. For some reason, she doesn't even think that Chevreuse, the future king, is not going to be tracking large-scale military movements. Like, let me send you my personal spy, Azzy, and he's going to fill you in on what's happening in your country.
Oh my god, this one man is all that stands in the way of the enemy hordes, and it's Azzy, and he, is a retired goldsmith. Yeah, so she didn't really think through that, but she has no way to like prove herself at this point. And so she's kind of like a rogue,
loose cannon.
A loose cannon, yeah,
Mhm.
like a rogue asset. Like, what the fuck is she gonna do? Because honestly, her support could tip the scales.
Mhm.
And so,
Because, like, I don't think we touched on this. Like, she's got a lot of friends and a lot of supporters of her own at court.
Yes, she has a lot of like social political power just as like a personality.
Mhm.
Like she's kind of this interesting, podunk, rustic countess who like basically gave a giant middle finger to the old king that everyone hated anyway, and then made a fool of him on these like horseback rides across the countryside. So she's like a person. She's like an it girl.
Mhm.
Everyone cares about her in her opinion.
Girl, that's she doesn't see herself that way, which is
Yeah.
the reason why it works and why you don't hate her
Mhm.
throughout, but she's definitely an it girl at court.
She's a heroine.
Aww. We did not do that on purpose, by
No, we
the
did
way.
not. That was very natural. Well,
Mhm.
like totally not natural at all, but like not scripted. How about that? And so it's super sad because the Chevreuse, or the Marquis of Chevreuse, asks Mel where she's headed. Like, you're headed to the border, huh? To go support the Marquis of Merendar. And he's all quiet and sad sounding and looking. And then she hits him with the like, no, I was going to warn the hill folk. And he's like, you're lying, I think. Like, I'm not really sure. And so they kind of like end their conversation there because they're at an impasse.
But Chevreuse, like, his level of confliction is high.
Through the roof.
And what is he doing with his hands?
I don't know. I didn't write that down.
Tugging at his gloves.
Oh, yes. This is okay, so that is important, listener, reader. This whole like stressful moment where he's like, I want to be king, and like, basically throw her in a dungeon so she can't like be a game changer during the events that are about to ensue. But like, he's also a man who like maybe has some complicated feelings for Mel, and he's like, but like, what if she's not lying?
What do I do then?
Yeah, and so he's stressing out and like playing with his gloves, and
he's very fidgety, which is not like Chevreuse, and Mel even comments on that.
Yes, she's like, oh, that's kind of like weird, but then they kind of bypass that. So remember that, dear listener, because that's a good tidbit. So the next morning, Mel wakes up to find the Marquis of Chevreuse gone, but cutely, adorably, where her cold, soggy cloak was laying out to dry is instead the Marquis's magic rain resistant one. And girl, if I didn't squeal out loud. So fucking cute, because it like smells like him, and she's probably all like snuggled up in it and like a little stressed out it's gonna get dirty, but she's like, so he's super conflicted on what he feels for me, but like he also kind of like
he likes
he
me.
likes you.
But also the like giving this magical cloak. Magical cloak is kind of a strong word, just magically rain resistant. Like the magic in this book is kind of like convenience magic.
Yes, yeah, because like even the like phone thing is convenience.
Yeah, they don't really dive into it, but he's riding around with no cloak.
I didn't think about that. He's cold. I feel like that's kind of him to a T is like he's protective,
Mhm.
but in a very adorable, like non-confrontational, just
Not in
like
an intrusive
subtle
way.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. He's like, she's gonna be cold. I'm just gonna like leave this for her. And it's like, oh, swoon.
Mhm.
And so basically, he's not sure if he totally believes her, but boy, does he always have a soft spot for our Mel. And so Mel rides off and, all snuggled up in this cute little rain resistant jacket. And in very Mel fashion, she finds the wagon train of Kinthus and she parks herself right in front of the convoy of literally 20 wagons full of armed guards and basically announces that they're going to have to kill her to move.
I was so confused
I was
during the
too.
scene. I'm like, what is happening? What is her plan?
She doesn't have one. That's her plan.
Which is legitimately confusing as a reader. I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
there's got to be something else going on here. No,
Nope.
she just full on sets her ass in the middle of the road.
Yep. And she basically almost dies. Like she absolutely, there is no, magic sword fighting ability that she's been working on in secret. No, she immediately, like her, sword gets flung out of her hand after like one or two strikes. And even the people are like, is there something like more going on here?
Do you need help? Do you need personal help?
Yes.
These are the bad guys curious about her.
Yep. And it's just funny. And it's just another little protective tidbit. There is an interestingly timed, huge ass group of riders appearing over the hills right when Mel needs it. And they're all wearing the livery of the Marquis of Chevreuse. I can never say that word better than you can. The Rensselaers livery.
Watch me not even be pronouncing it the way the author.
It sounds good though. Can you say it again?
Rensselaers.
Yeah, it's got all the like letters in there that make something sound good. I just can't.
It's
say
majestic sounding.
It
They
really
should be.
is.
Rulers.
Yeah. The name done. And so, obviously, because Mel went into this with no plan whatsoever, and it's like one small, very petite person against a literal, 20 wagon convoy of well-armed guards.
Explosives. It's explosives. And she's like, nah, I got this by myself.
It's like, girl, you do not got this. So they basically save her ass. And the next day, they act as her honor guard and they escort her to the heart of the action because our Mel obviously doesn't want to miss out. And it's kind of fun, too, because we get a return of Captain Nissarin. And she's like, hey, girl, like, what you doing? She's like, I'm not really sure, but I didn't really have a plan, but like,
I was just going to wing it.
We were just going to do it live.
Yeah.
And so she's delivered straight to the headquarters tent where one Marquis of Chevreuse awaits. And oh my God, these next couple lines just softened everything in my soul because Mel immediately remarks internally, like as soon as she walks into the tent, that the Marquis's face relaxed. And it's like she didn't even realize, because the line was something like she didn't realize that he was stressed out until all of a sudden she walked in and he calmed down and he saw her. It's like, that's so fucking cute. Like he was stressed out and he's protective and he's like, oh my God. Because Mel has a just extraordinary ability to get into some shit unprepared. Yeah. Do we need to recount the whole snagging the pie off of the table from the Baron and then immediately exactly. He's constantly picking up after her. And so of course he's stressed out, but it's a cute little oh.
I hadn't remembered her focusing on him relaxing. And now I want to go back and read that scene.
It's such a cute because she walks in and it's immediately he's like, okay, she didn't die, which is a reasonable.
And he's busy too.
Yeah. Because immediately he has a bunch of people in the tent and they're all, basically preparing to fight this war.
It's a command center.
Yeah. Basically everyone is in there. They all have a role. And so the Marquis, I feel shows a little bit of development in this scene too, because basically in front of the whole tent, he asks, kind of snarkily, 20 wagons, Lady Melara. And it's oh, okay, that's a good little zinger. He's like, are you fucking kidding me? How many was too many?
Mm-hmm.
You're really going for 20 as one person? Yeah. And so what proceeds is a bunch of snarky back and forth, during which the Marquis demands that Mel come up with something sufficiently heroic to say when she undertakes all of these literally batshit crazy adventures. And she's like, well, I'm just I'm Mel. And he's like, no, you need something very dramatic to say. And so one by one, the Marquis dismisses all the people in his tent, handing off orders and directive until it's just the two of them.
Oh.
This whole scene is just fucking adorable.
You know that scene in, maybe we already talked about Pride and Prejudice?
Yes, but I think it's in episode 5, the Q&A.
Okay. Well, I think we talk about a different scene in Pride and Prejudice in the Q&A. The scene I'm thinking of is the very last scene in the movie, or the second to last scene, where he's walking across the field.
Yes.
And the sun is just rising.
Oh my God. And it's like misty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the music in that scene and the general feels.
Yes.
That's the vibe of this tent.
Oh, yes. Abso-fucking-lutely. It is so adorable. And so they kind of have this little like Q&A session because like obviously Mel has questions. And so basically he explains that she missed most of the action because they had arrived and they caught the Marquis of Merindar and her daughter by surprise. Like they didn't know that anyone had known yet. They were about to like stage a coup. And so he reveals that the Marquis took some poison instead of being arrested, but they had taken the daughter into custody. And he's basically now just waiting for a daily messenger from his parents saying that everything's okay in the city. Unfortunately, this messenger is now nerve-wrackingly late. And so they have, they end their little question answer period. And he basically asks if Mel has anything else she wants to know. And so Mel gathers up all of her courage and basically in this adorable little display of courage and strength
and vulnerability.
Yes, vulnerability. She starts in on an apology for acting like a dick to him the past several months. And she says that she owes him a bit of an explanation for her behavior. Oh, we love some good character growth.
Accountability, Mel. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Except the Marquis interrupts her and says, before you proceed any further, this might be one of my more spectacular mistakes. And he starts to take off his gloves. And ho ho, what is on that little pinky finger?
I'm getting all tingly just hearing about this again.
Oh my God. It is none other than that teeny little gold ring with the little gold laurels on it and the big stone that we forgot what it's called. That ring is on his finger. So that ring belongs to Mel's admirer.
The ring.
And it's the ring that she made for her admirer. And Mel, very adorably, very sweetly, very naively, she's such a sweet little summer child. She very intelligently, straight on the mark, she says, that's my ring. Like, girl, welcome to the conversation. And so the Marquis snarks back, yes, you made it, but now it's mine. And Mel's heart is racing 1,000,000 beats per second. And this suave ass sly son of a bitch says, I think it's time to collect on my wager.
Do you remember what wager?
The wager, when they were racing across the countryside. And he's like, if you beat me, or if I beat you, you have to give me a kiss. And she's like, oh my God, like if I win, I don't have to cash in on this. Like, and then she lost. And he's like, oh, we'll just like, pick a time and a place of my choosing. This was the time and the place he chose. And girl, like good decision.
Beginning of the book, we had to earn this all the way through the entire
for one kiss. The work we put in.
I have never read so hard for one moment between two characters.
Yeah, I feel like we've talked about this before, and if we haven't mentioned it, it's definitely in episode 5. Like, this is not a spicy book, but this scene was like spicy in the heart. This is the one that kind of gives you a little bit of like heartburn. You're like, wow, that tasted good, but like, oh, that was spicy. That is the scene. And so after he adds that little like, sly one-liner of, I think it's time to collect on my wager, he closes in to kiss her, all coy and slow. And Mel, our dear fucking adoring, lovely Mel, she locks her fingers around his neck and yanks his face to hers. Aw.
It is very much them, though.
It so is, because he's like, I'm going to be like suave about this kiss and like, lean in all like slow and coy. And she's like, come here, you dumbass. And so while I wish we could cut off our cute little happy story right here with a clean little happy ending, we still have some loose ends to tie up. Specifically, where is this courier from Chevre's parents saying everything's Gucci on the home front, and has not shown up.
Excuse me, everything's Gucci?
Everything's Gucci on the home front.
Wow.
I want that on a t-shirt. So of course, golden timing. As they're kissing, the courier comes galloping over, and so they immediately, break apart very breathlessly. And
I'm
then
shocked that this courier wasn't fucking Bran.
I know.
With his timing.
That would be so on brand. On brand for Bran. But no, it's some like random guy. And he basically says that the whole city is quiet, but not in a good way. Like, as in, there is literally no one on the streets, not even a dog or a cat. And this is like a pretty big city. So that's
a capital.
That's suspicious. And so they immediately, Mel and Chevreth, they immediately set back to Ramalna City to find out, like, what in God's name is happening in our capital city, because, like, boy, is something happening. They take a small break on their way, however, and essentially talk through how like literally everything happened and they got to this point, because like that's kind of bonkers. Oh, and she also asks about like Eleanor, and he's like, yeah, she's like a friend. And Mel kind of decides to keep to herself all of her like observations on like breathy Eleanor, who's like blushing and like totally in love. And she's like, I'm gonna just keep that to myself.
That was such a good move on her part.
Yeah, because it shows that she's not self-conscious of like her now new relationship with the Marquis. And I feel like that's something we don't get a lot in books, where they immediately kind of like pin female characters against each other. But like Mel kind of does this in a very like, you're a good person. Like
it's good because I mean, we don't really talk about Lady Eleanor a lot, but the details that are given in the book about her, she's a cool character. She has her own really neat backstory, and she could probably go toe to toe with Mel as far as like heroines.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. But Mel's like, I'm not gonna be a bitch. Well done. Basically. So they have this whole conversation, but kind of a fun little tidbit was that Mel's mother was killed for learning sorcery. And so this little scene is very like cutely ended with, a little tidbit of love. And Chevreth basically asks Mel to call him by his name, literally for the first time in this whole like goddamn book. And Mel very obligingly calls him Vidandric.
You know what? I do have a critique.
There it is.
That is probably like a personal pet peeve of mine, is that using the call me by my first name as a romantic moment. Like, really?
Yeah. So I don't know if like we've talked about it, but like I'm married, and I don't think I've called my partner by his name like really ever in like a romantic, like you call them by their pet name, or like whatever you refer to them as
having significance, right?
Yeah, like it's only when you're like mad at them and you're like, God, like I need help, and you just say their name. It's like it's never romantic or like breathy.
It's usually in these stories that are set in like a historical or a fantasy setting where it's like very rigid manners and social norms, so using first names aren't common. Like that's the trope, and then the characters break it by we're going to be romantic with each other.
But that's not really done in this, because don't they all call each other by them by their first names?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point.
Yeah, so is he like a little bit narcissistic?
Or I don't know.
I mean, then again, they've known each other for like 6 or 7 months, and she's literally never called you by your name. She's only called you by like
your
the
title.
City you come from.
Yeah.
That would be kind of weird, but still, it's like, home dog.
Come on now.
Yeah, it ain't that important. Sadly, though, the cuteness ends almost immediately, because they finish their ride to the capital city, and because literally nothing is going on, as in everyone is frozen solid in some sort of like magic sleep.
Maybe it's the hill folk. Maybe they like enacted their magical revenge because something happened.
That's a good little like diversion. They immediately find out that's not what happens, though.
Just try to throw out the listeners a little bit. Like, let's make the next part a surprise.
Because they creep up to the castle throne room, and they're really like not sure of what they're gonna find inside, because they're like, oh, like what if it is the hill folk? Like, who could it be? And lo and behold, it's Flauvik.
You say Flauvik the way I say Rensselaers.
Yes, that is true. Flauvik. It's just so much fun. But he obviously like goes full bad guy, and he has this catchy little one-liner of, "What took you so long, my dear cousin Vidandric?" It's like he gets his name said by like everyone except Mel. But it's just, immediately cues to the part where the evil bad guy explains all of his plans in a very, gloating manner to, obviously to the shit out of luck Kuros who are never going to be able to stop him. And he's so evil genius.
Such a James Bond here.
Yeah. And Flauvik explains that he purposely tried to give the air of a reclusive, studious royal over the years so that no one would pay much attention to him and find out that he has been secretly studying magic for years. However, during this whole monologue, Mel is only half paying attention because there seems to be something on the wind, like some sort of weird humming sound that is just there in the back of her mind. But she's like, I have no fucking idea what that is, but I'm going to give it a little bit of time to develop. And so she decides to keep Flauvik talking until obviously this humming sound evolves into like something with a capital S. And Flauvik and Mel have this glorious fucking exchange in this tidbit. I love it. She is cold as fuck. So he, and this is like a quote.
We practiced this quote. Like, who could say the line in this better?
And I can't say it. I'm not that I'm like too nice, but like I imagine this is said so fucking coldly and like elusively. Like, okay, so this is the scene. So he turned to me and with a mockingly courteous gesture said, I fault no one for ambition. If you wish, you may gracefully exit now and save yourself some regrettably painful experience. I like you. Your ignorance is refreshing and your passions amusing. For a time, we could keep each other company. And Mel claps back with a totally cold fuck you in her retort. Unfortunately, I find you boring. I
Beautiful.
died. Oh my, just how it shows. And even in the book, like right before she says that line, she like musters up her like coldest, most aloof, like snooty Shivraith voice when she delivers it. And I just imagine it is like direct cut, cold as fuck. Like he is blown back and he's like, this bitch. Just raw, just absolutely cold. But the sound at this point is getting louder. And all of a sudden, the group looks outside and the building is completely surrounded by thousands of hillfolk. And so Flauvik starts to panic and he snags up Mel and he has a blade to her throat and he's screaming that, you need to make them stop. You need to call them off. Like, we are not going to end this interaction this way. But the hillfolk keep on hillfolking.
It is a verb now.
It is
Hillfolkin'.
hillfolkin'. And so all of a sudden, there is an explosion of loud cracks and booms and bright light. And all of a sudden, Flauvik turns into the world's prettiest colorwood tree right in the middle of the throne room.
No one important dies. I mean,
that's true. He's alive. And I think they talk about that too. Like he's just, standing there listening to all these like political intrigue happening around him. And if he ever did get turned back into a human, he'd be like the smartest, most politically savvy man in the world. But he's just a tree. And outside, the hillfolk all, mysteriously vanish as mysteriously as they'd arrived. And the residents of the capital city start to wake up as if from a heavy sleep. And there's like one that they comment on and like talk about. And it's this guard. And he's like snoring really loudly, like on the ground. And that's kind of adorable. He's just like, he's a hardworking man. Leave him alone. And so, with final sighs of relief, as Smithwood writes, the duel was over and they had won. We did it.
What a journey.
We made it all the way to the end. We got through all this is probably like hour 5 of this podcast. We promise the next ones will not be this long. I swear. Well, maybe. I can't make that promise.
Yeah, I can't either.
We just got a lot to say.
If I was going to spend this amount of time on any book, I'm glad it was this one.
I agree. It's a solid one that I feel like not enough people know about or talk about because we mentioned it earlier in one of the episodes that it hits all of the major tropes. So we have a hardcore like textbook enemies to lovers. because the Marquis and Vidandric. There you go. I'll say your name, you hoe. We have that like they start at odds. They actually literally hate each other, and then they very slowly as they get to know each other fall in love. So we have that trope, and then we also have like a whole court intrigue trope, which I feel like is big right now. And then we also have, I feel like there's another one. Oh, we have anonymous letters. Like that's one
that's a great one that you don't see a lot anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of slept on. Like nobody really talks about that one, but I love a good anonymous letters when it's not from someone like creepy.
I have looked, I think, on the Goodreads list for books centered on this love letters trope.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, you're just gonna like hit us with that like one line on your fucking like resume for why you're qualified to do this.
Reading style. Yeah. We're not gonna go any further than that, except Goodreads has lots of handy lists.
That's fair. And so if you follow us on Goodreads, Jordan, will you reveal what our next book is?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It is The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah.
That is so exciting. I feel like I read the back of this book and I'm like, I really want to read this right now, but I'm going to wait so that Jordan and I can read it together with all of our potential listeners at this point. I don't want to get like too big for my own britches, but there could be like one or two people.
There's some of you reading along with us.
Yeah. So that is our next book. We'll put it on our Instagram in case you guys forget or you want to order your own copy.
Just one final warning. Though on this book, I believe it's book one of a trilogy, and all three books aren't out yet. And I know some readers don't like to start a trilogy or any kind of series before everything's published.
That's true. So if you're one of those people, which totally understand that, you can flash forward to episode 8, which will be the Q&A session for that book. So if you just want like to get your feet wet a little bit, but maybe not like spoil the whole book, you can read that and be like, oh, maybe I'll just like take a little tidbit, or I'll wait for all 3 books to come out, which is fair. Up to you, your preference. So with that,
from our shelf to yours,
we'll see you on the next page. Hi readers, if you'd like to help us pick our next book, send us a message on Instagram.
Or if you'd like to just listen, we post new episodes every Monday on Spotify, Amazon, or Apple Music. Thanks for listening.